Hey guys, it's Allie back with Awakening with Allie. And I'm so excited for today's guest. I have such an incredible guest with me, you guys, and you probably know him. And if you don't, you're gonna just love him. I have David Lawrence Palmer, who is known as the Leo King, and he owns and operates multiple OTT media corporations. Has 12th House Media, founder of High Vibe TV and Spiritual Dance Music. And guys, he's a celebrity astrologer if you don't know who he is. He's been featured everywhere, like ET being like one of the main places. He's making waves in the media with what he's doing as a media spiritual influencer. He's been on TV for over a decade, but I want him to tell all about himself, enough about what I'm sharing. So thank you for being here, David. I'm so excited to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me, Allie. Truly happy to be on your podcast and love your energy, love your vibe. So
Thank
it's an
you.
honor to be here.
Cool. Well, I'm so excited. So, I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time. Could you tell my, listeners or, viewers, how you got into this? Were you always in astrology? What's the background? Give us the breakdown of how you got here. Or have you always been in this space?
I mean, yeah, I would say as an astrologer, you're already signed up into it before birth. Like I always feel like the biggest free will choice we have is the choice that we made to come down here. So yeah, I was into astrology before I even was conscious in this life of it. But yeah, I mean the reality 3D story would be, I mean, my mom told me I was a Leo when I was like 8. There was Men is from Mars, Women are from Venus, that book she had, and I asked her what it was, and the idea of what people are connected and men and women are connected to Mars and Venus. Then AOL chat and going to 7th and 8th grade and asking girls what their signs were and looking on AOL when it just came out.
I love it.
That's really where it started, was AOL for me.
But AOL, oh my God. I remember AOL and the dial-up. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I was in those teen chats, but then that was the beginning of, going to websites. So I found the Mayan. I actually went into the whole Mayan calendar 2012. Long count calendar ending, and there was this old HTML website, and I read it all night. Even in high school, I was up till 4 a.m. and up at 6 a.m. for water polo or whatever, up all night researching on AOL and finding weird stuff. I was into Timothy Leary, watching his live stream when he died in 96. It was crazy.
Oh, wow.
It was like, that's where I was when I was like 12 and 13 and 14. I was just into that while I was still into going to parties with everybody and being the water polo captain, varsity, and doing volleyball and all that. I was doing it all. You would never know at that time.
So it was kind of an undercover thing when you were young, but you were always into it.
Yeah, I was always into it, but it was more like experimentation. I remember I always say this story. It's some people already know, but it's just I remember I was dating the different cheerleaders at my high school, and it was some guy was like, they're all the same. I'm like, no, that Pisces one's so different than that one, that whatever sign that one might be, right? And I was like, they're way different. They're all not the same, right? And I know that is a weird way to look at it, but I remember being like, no, not everybody is the same. And I, especially being the water polo captain, I'm like, no, this guy's weak in the pool. This guy's too afraid. He's not going to be that great, but that guy's a fast swimmer, and this guy, everybody's different, right? So astrology is amazing because everybody's different. Even though the sun signs make people think that we're all the same and maybe a tribe, there's similar qualities, but astrology goes so much deeper. And I went to the military when I was 18, to the U.S. Navy as a rescue swimmer, and then I worked on F-18s.
Oh, wow.
I got out of that, and literally was working at a boat dealership on the beach, and I was the parts manager. So when it was winter, not a lot of customers came in, and cable internet now was out and stuff. And that's when I started running charts. And then I started studying with astrologers. And then that's pretty much, I mean, it never, that was 19, 20 years or 20 years old. So by 20 years old, I was doing charts and I was all into it. I was doing tarot readings and scaring my friends after raves. I used to go to a lot. I was a big raver. So
okay.
I was in the dance scene, really, really way back, in the early 2000s. So
yeah,
it was you stay up all night after those raves, and then you all hang out. And then I would pull out my tarot cards. And back then it wasn't like today where you could find 10,000 decks. It was to go find tarot cards, you had to go to either a tarot spiritual shop, which were not around a lot, or
Right.
like we call them here in Southern California like swap meets, but they're called like flea markets, other places like the psychic at the flea market who has the Rider Waite tarot set. You know what I mean? Like it was like that, and people were freaked out. Like what? Especially my guy
That's
friends, they
funny.
were like, "What?" But it was people. It was like a '70s like trick, like I guess you could say, right? The guys always used to be like, "Hey, what's your sign?" I literally was doing that in the early 2000s, and like people, but they didn't know that existed in the '70s. It like had died. So it was like one of those things where I'm like, we bringing it back, like, "Hey, want me to do your tarot cards?" Like, what? I have no idea what those things are. Is that like the Ouija board? I'm like, man, like and that was the whole purpose of where I'm at today still, where, I've spent this last 14 years making astrology cool. Like that
Yeah,
was the whole
totally.
point. Like, and, nobody was doing any of that stuff. Like it was like to where anywhere I went, I was being judged. I mean, you name it. Like it was crazy. And even being on TV and doing it, I was the first astrologer to ever do reality television. And so it was
Oh,
like,
wow.
it was crazy having like the attacks from the media, which is all on my YouTube, all those attacks and stuff from Jimmy Kimmel to you name him, all the celebrities at the time, like making fun of astrology and who's this astrologer DJ. And
That's because I don't want you to take away from them. They're the stars.
I mean, well, yeah, well, Jimmy Kimmel's a Scorpio, and he really just is such a non-believer. And I mean, after the things he
Yeah,
said in 2021 about people who have the shot and don't, like
totally.
they should go to the hospital and they should die, basically.
Yeah,
And
pretty
that's
much. Yeah.
basically where. And for me, when I saw that, I went, okay, I don't feel so weird that he made fun of astrology.
Totally. You're like, oh, this makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that took 11 years to finally, because in 2010 is when he was, so right out the gate doing all these TV shows and all that stuff and trying to bring astrology to the masses.
Yeah.
It was like the biggest hurt like in my life. Like, wow, people do not want astrology. Now it's a different story.
Totally. Well, and I can imagine back then people were also like super fearful, right? Because people will tell you it's demonic, it's wrong, it's this, it's that. There's all kinds of, connotations. And it's like you were trying to bring it in a space of like, no, 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 this is something like I literally have had since I was a kid. Like, let me share it with you. Let me share my gift. And people are like, whoa, what's this? I'm freaked out. Whereas now people are like, wait, what's going on in the world? Tell me what's happening.
Like literally, or it's become a trend, which I don't think it's a bad thing. Like I wouldn't call it trendy. It's a trend. It's like
Yeah.
people are finding, honestly, ways to change their lives and be better people through. I don't care if it's a small TikTok video or a deep, long, really esoteric astrology talk into really deep spiritual stuff. I'm
Yeah.
more on that end of it, but I also bring the comedy to it too. So it's like one of
Yeah,
those.
that's what I love. When I started following you and watching you, I was like, oh my God, there's like comedy to it, which is awesome.
Yeah, and like doing the whole like kind of stand-up improv astrology channeled horoscope thing was like my thing. So it was like an evolutionary process. I can't even believe it's been as long as it's been. Like I really to be doing it as long as I have, where now it's kind of been a thing over the last 3-4 years for people where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's nice. Y'all don't realize what it was like. Every turn was very difficult. Or even getting on television back then was like, we can't do that. We'll do the psychic thing, but we won't do
Right.
the
Yeah. We can't talk about
astrology
that.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it
Wow.
was just only mediums because people on TV are only interested in that. So to get production companies and to get television shows and to get networks to be cool with astrology was like I had to like use like my model personality and I had to use the reality show personality and I had to use that and talk about things I really didn't want to talk about, but to get it to where we're at today, like literally
Yeah.
going through those fights and going through those like, those weird looks in the corner, like that was hard. That
Oh,
was
yeah,
like
I'm sure.
that's what I don't, if I were to use, I've talked about these stories a lot on a lot of podcasts and stuff, but if I were to give you something unique, like I really have never talked so much about how hard it was and that people didn't realize like I was really fighting for the mainstream to accept it for a decade.
Hmm.
And finally, right before the pandemic, Steve Harvey just like I don't even though I have agents and all that stuff, they weren't booking me. It was like like Steve Harvey's crew directly hit me up, and we did the longest segment of astrology on national television, especially on when you're in network and not cable, right? And
Yeah.
that segment was like, I finally was like, thank God, like we're here. If Steve Harvey is having me on and help a girl find love and give me 3 charts of people I don't even know, can't even see, and say which one's the best for her. And then I don't know, oh, they're going to throw those guys up there and I'm going to have to be there with her, and she's going to have to pick the guys and I have to be right. You know, that she picked one of the guys that I would say astrologically was correct. So like, that's the kind of stuff it takes, you know, and you don't see a lot of that.
Oh, no, definitely not. No. And I mean, I get it, obviously coming from, you know, the reality world and styling world and all of that, and being in the behind the scenes as well as on camera, in front of the camera. And you're right. It's very vulnerable. It's very intimidating. There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of experts who want to tell you what to do. I mean, there's a lot, and it can be really overwhelming and really vulnerable. And I think it's cool that you share that, being where you are now, because it's true. It's like, people don't see that. They don't see like truly the blood, sweat, and tears. They don't see, and especially for you, it was like a whole spiritual level, because it's like, okay, when you're trying to just be in that space, period, it's hard. But then you add on like your actual like gift and what you were doing, and like wasn't out there, it wasn't mainstream, it wasn't really talked about, and you really put yourself in a vulnerable place to be able not only to like talk about it, but like to share it and bring it in, to be like, hey, this is something you can actually like use in your life if you're actually being willing to, you know, accept this and you know, and bring it in. And you know, that's a big deal.
Well, thanks. I mean, I would think so. I feel like you bring up such great points about the industry and how one already now I don't know if you're dealing with it, but now after this pandemic and where we're at with things, like now, if you ever were in Hollywood, you're assumed that you're now part of the demonic cult or something.
Oh, totally,
right?
for
So
sure. Yeah,
I'm already dealing with that by being an astrologer. So
of
it's like, now
course.
I'm dealing with it twice. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
now I'm dealing with it because I was doing it in Hollywood to actually try and do this deep spiritual work. And I had to, you know, they wouldn't buy that spiritual deep stuff. So I would have to do the more mundane, like, you know, what's Justin Bieber going to be doing? Or especially like, people don't realize I was on Kiki Palmer in 2014. And
Oh my
that
God,
was
I styled Kiki Palmer for a while.
oh, cool. She's awesome. And her and I have the same last name. And that's actually a great episode. But, you know, she was that cool. She was the youngest TV host of all time. And as a female too, but also as any man or female at all, like crazy, right? And she was that cool to be able to do this huge segment. But I remember having a panic attack right before walking on, because, you know, all the BET producers are like, okay, well, you're going to be talking about all these couples and they're all BET stars. Because if you're on BET, like, you become a BET star.
Oh, yeah.
It's like really weird.
Yeah.
BET has like, they're the only, people don't realize, like, it's like a thing. Like, if you're on BET,
they have their own,
they have their own like stars. And if you talk anything negative, you'll never have a job in this industry again, kind of thing, right? And I'm like, it's 2014. I'm looking at the planets going, and I have to talk about Beyonce and Jay-Z. I'm like, and I'm not gonna hold my tongue back. I'm gonna say that they're gonna have really bad problems, and there's gonna be some crazy crap. And literally, I predicted that he would cheat and like all that crazy stuff, right? For 2015.
Totally.
But they kind of edited it weird at that point and said, oh, well, you know, we hope that they'll be all right. But like the panic attack of like realizing, like, man, people don't realize how much they actually try to shut you up. They don't want
and how much they edit and how much they change of like what you're doing. And oh my gosh, that was like, every time I would do something and I'd watch it back, I'd be like, wait, I didn't say it like that. It's like, you know, but that's what they do. That's how it rolls. I mean, you know, but like you said, like you were finally able to push it through and bring it into the mainstream, which is really cool, because now obviously like people are actually looking for it. People, like you said, are actually using it to, you know, better their lives, to actually say like, oh, I'm not just, you know, like for me, right? Like, you know, I used to just think like, oh, I'm a Cancer. And that never resonated for me, because I was like, well, I'm not really someone who like goes in my shell. I mean, I guess I do when I do inward work, but other than that, I'm pretty extroverted. And it just never resonated, like most of the things about it. And so I would always like ponder, like, how is that possible? Like everyone says like your sign is your sign. But then when you start to learn like, oh, you're rising, oh, you're this, oh, you're that. And you're like, oh, and then you start looking at those other parts of you and it's like, oh, this makes sense. This is why I'm emotional and I'm like this. Oh, this makes sense. This is why this. And now, being a mom, of three, like finding out, like my kids' signs and figuring out like, pieces to them to better understand them and how they operate. Like, oh, this
Yeah.
one's going to be more, strong and powerful. This is going to be more sensitive about this. And like
Hmm.
actually being able to be conscious of that, like as a conscious
Right.
parent has been so much more helpful for me, at least as a new mom, like versus just being like, oh, okay, well, my kid's this and they're supposedly like this, because then
Right.
it's so in a box instead of like their uniqueness.
Yeah. And that's what makes it so beautiful, because you can, whether it's a friend, whether it's family, whether it's your children, it's like you actually get to a process with astrology where you're like, you know what? I know they're going through this. This person's going through this in my life. And it's like, maybe instead of taking it so personally, how somebody might be going through something, it's like, as an astrologer, I'll be like, this is really going to be the roughest year of their life that I will ever see in their whole. If I were to go 100 years, I'd be like, this will be the
Right.
hardest year of their life. Like, so it's like, helps you consciously realize, like, my own needs and wants, my own ego wants of what you want somebody else to be like. That's just, I think astrology on the deepest level, that's what it does, is it helps you relate with people better. Number one, it's a language
Definitely.
that, like, people either speak or they don't. And then
Yeah.
two, it's the ability to be able to be like, you know what, like, it always teaches you it's never about me when you're looking at somebody else. Like, it's like,
Right.
it really helps you look at other people in front of yourself to understand what they're going through, understand their traits, their things, and especially where they're at. And when you understand that, it totally takes away your own, like, version of wherever the ego is. And I feel like that's a lot of the problem with society today, is people just are like, they should be doing this. Like, he should have called me back. And that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not. My dad used to say, well, that's a great, I love astrology, son. You know why? Because it's just a great excuse. You can just blame it on the planets, in life. And, he was a double Aquarius. But it's like, that is true. I guess some people could, but it's like, it's not so much about the person using it. It's the observer that
Yes.
understands it. That's the point that I'm coming across, is right. It's like, they're going through a lot, and they won't have an excuse after that 1 year or whatever it might be. Right. Like, but
Right.
it's like, you could see so much out of people, not only how they are, but what they're going through. And I think that's the real deep stuff, or what we're all going through as a collective, is what I focus so much on.
Yeah.
And that's really where, that was a crazy idea back in 2008 and 9 when I started. It was like, you're going to do what? You're going to do collective horoscopes, like talking about the collective consciousness. Isn't it the collective unconscious? I'm like, man. So every step of the way is always, when you go your own path, it's always one of those things that there's way more there for you, especially facing all those fears. And in astrology, there was a lot of fears, and they continue today, but you just can't be afraid, and you have to go your own route.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because I think especially like on my show, I'm all about, being awakening with Allie. It's like, what was your awakening? And then like, how can I help empower you through, or how can we discuss what empowered you through and like what awakened you? Because I think so many, obviously getting into the collective consciousness, are going through these awakenings right now, are having so many shifts of, I don't want to be in this job. I don't want to be dating this person. I don't want to be in this life, this situation, whatever it may be, but how do I change it? I've been stuck here in this comfortable position that's not actually comfortable. And then, of course, COVID, pandemic, all the things that shook the world up, I believe has been the catalyst for all this. And it's all like brought it all up to the surface. And now people are having to essentially see it, do the shadow work, and be like, oh, I wasn't really happy, but how just pretend to be happy for all these years. And now I can't pretend. And so I tell people, I'm like, well, when you woke up, you have to think about like, you're willing to step into what you just said, like that true individuality, that true sovereignty of like who you are. And I get that it's hard. So, I mean, I love that you speak to the collective and everything you just said. So could we dive into that? Could you share like, as you decided to get into that work and start studying that, like from what you first started with, where the collective was many years ago to where we are now, but what's that first, kind of like for you, like taking us back to like where we've gotten to now? Because I'm sure for you, again, speaking to you being the observer, us being the observer with other people, what was that like to kind of see that shift?
I think the most deepest part of the awakening for me, but also I think for anybody who really starts to look and use the lens of astrology with the world, which is called mundane astrology, even though I don't call it that. That's why I started calling them collective horoscopes. And then if you notice anybody who says that around, it's like, thanks. But that was the crazy part. It was like the lens at the time of, like, let's say for my awakenings 2004 through 5 and 6 was my spiritual awakening, which was a very, very weird time to have a spiritual awakening. I mean, you have
It's
to
kind
remember
of early, Like, I mean, like for what I've read, doesn't that seem like earlier than a lot of people that
yeah,
awaken?
I mean, that was like MySpace was not even full blown, it was, I mean, there was no iPhone, there was no, so like resources were still books, or you were lucky to even find anybody who we could talk to about it, like,
Yeah.
unless you went to like a conference for it. So, and I was really young, so to for me it was psychedelics and it was the rave scene, and to be looking at the world and what was going on by being in the military and seeing what was happening with the Iraq war and 9/11. And I was like using astrology and being like, whoa, this is going to be the craziest situations that will happen by 2012, that we will never feel like we're on the same vibration ever again. So I focused a lot of the work on 2012. So back in 2012, when it was finally at that point, the years prior were just doing shows that were more light and fun, and getting people to like, what's a Mercury retrograde and stuff like that.
Right.
And this is back when YouTube, I mean, it was still in 4.3, not like 16.9 like we're in now. And so like it was like, we were doing that kind of stuff, and I was working with Soul Garden, Christopher Witecki, and we were doing like a cool show called Astro Gossip, talking about the news and how it related to astrology to kind of wake people up. But it was that 2012 work I was doing, and like there was only like 10 blogs back then that I could find that
Wow.
were consistently updating people of like what's happening astrologically, and going into way deeper forms of that, of like understanding what's happening in our galaxy right now, because the understanding is too hard for many people to contemplate when you get to galactic consciousness. It's like
Yeah.
galactic consciousness is a thing that still has not taken off. And like that's been like I think the hardest part, whether people through the pandemic and they might go through their shadows and stuff, it's like the Great Awakening is cosmic consciousness, because that's really what, and not planetary, like celestial, that's celestial. Cosmic, meaning beyond our solar system, and understanding what are those patterns. And that's what the Mayans were doing. And 2012 work was a world that literally people don't realize a whole 13 Baktun system ended, and we're in this in-between universe moment, in between
Mm.
universes. And it's not just going to go away. There's not some moment when it's all going to, that when people finally detach from my life prior to 2012, which, you go 13, 14, 15, you already were feeling it weird, but it's easy to kind of push it off. 2020 was like oh gosh. And then
Yeah.
people relate it to more of the reality, when really that was actually the galactic, and what's happening here in this solar system, and what's happening here on this earth finally reaching a point of like, you let go yet? No. Oh, okay. Well, then keep having fun.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
and it's still going to continue that way, no matter how good the astrology might look or how bad it might look. It's more about when people realize we're in between universes, like we're literally, like there's another universe opening up, and there's another observer besides God that's observing at the same time too. And that when people start tapping in and realizing, that's why it feels weird that we're being observed by another life force, with whether or not that has good intentions or not. And that also is way beyond our even understanding. Whether you want to, people always like to say AI. I'm just going right down to it, because like I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't like to play with all the like toys. Like I'm just like, let's go to the deep stuff. that's what people's issue is, not so much of in their life. It's much more of whether they're really ready to tap into so many higher conscious realms, and so many people call them dimensions, and there's a lot of new age talk out there, but it's
Right.
actually a lot simpler. It's really about galactic consciousness, understanding where the sun is in our solar system, but in our galaxy, and how that is in alignment, at the galactic understanding of the ecliptic and the equator. So like we're literally at the middle of this flat disk of our galaxy, and we're
Mm.
rising now to the top portion of it. Just how we move in seasons on the earth and how the sun works. The sun has its own seasons in its galactic shift. And so this is also where we get so much of all of the galaxy. And there's this weird energy with all the other galaxies that are all starting to align, and all these systems aligning. So that's what I'm saying. We're getting these other forms of what, if you were to take somebody back in like the Renaissance period in the early 1500s, to them, it's like me and God, right? Like, it's like, da, 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 da. And then there was the ideas of great astrologers back then, bringing these ideas of the celestial, the super celestial, and then, the horizon of eternity, like John Dee's work. And it was like, wow, like they were doing it too, but they also knew, whether it was Nostradamus predicting that, people just aren't going to get it, or John Dee writing 1 out of every 1,000,000. But if you take the people at that time, he actually was even saying 1 out of 1 billion will ever get it.
Mm.
That most people just will not take the time to do the long and tedious inspirational work that's right in front of their face. Like
And
you can go out every night and go look at what's happening and understand those patterns, and then apply them in a deeper sense to the galactic understanding, and you'll finally start to understand what's going on. But to not pay attention to it, it's again being stuck in the same shoebox, and waiting for the shoebox to stop smelling or something when it gets moved in a different place or something, with thinking that it'll be better and will stay a certain way. Like we're in a place that is so beyond the comprehension of our collective, of understanding who we really are, what got down here, what history really had, the real recorded history, that a lot of it was washed away, but a lot of it
Mhm.
has been with all of our ancient ancestors. They left all the clues. It's just whether or not we're gonna start applying them. And when we're not, I mean, everything's flipped upside down. It's an inverse reality now. It's like, you would think that people like doctors who take a Hippocratic oath would use astrology, since Hippocrates in 400 BC is what created the father of medicine, the way that doctors are supposed to handle patients and understand how to care.
Mm.
That Hippocratic oath is from Hippocrates. And he even says, a physician that does not know astrology should not practice astrology. Or the original translation is a fool.
Mm.
So you have every doctor today thinking they know how to fix the pandemic or what to do, and they're not even using astrology, and they think it's crap. No wonder the whole system's gone. I mean, there's little things like that where it's like,
I didn't
why
know
do
that. That's
every
pretty cool.
oh yeah, why like, so every Hippocratic oath is a fool if they don't apply that with understanding their work. And all the zodiac, from Aries down to Pisces, the two fish or feet, literally is how to live your life and your health. And everybody's different. I'm a Leo. Like, don't make a Leo vegan. Not
Right.
gonna work. Not gonna be good. So it's
Yeah.
like, everybody's different, but everybody thinks in the spiritual community that they have this one way, and that's the only way for it to be, and
Right.
or that they, and that's what's kind of a scary thing, is what's really now coming in are all these different energies from stuff outside of our solar system. And even if you want to use science, especially because as an astrologer, you have to use astronomy and you have to use the cosmology understanding of our universe. There are solar rays from our sun that have been building up, that why we're seeing so many more solar flares. There's the magnetic
I've been seeing
fields,
that. Yeah.
right? But that's a lot of it. What people don't realize is as the planets go around the sun, there's also the cosmic rays that are coming in, and there's other electromagnetic waves coming from our galaxy itself. And the sun becomes like a magnet because it's magnetized, and it takes all that, and then it starts to, like, if you ever, rub your feet on the carpet and electromagnetism and you touch somebody, the sun will eventually make a minor nova event and like it'll shake it all off. And then it will look at our, if you look at our Earth right now, we have a protective shield of the electromagnetic field that is so weak right now. So all those solar flares coming in are affecting people, but people are thinking something else, right? Like, oh, I didn't drink my alkaline water enough today. But everything that is happening that the mind's predicted and everything, and as we shift into this new idea of what a universe is, when people probably hear this, you're probably like, what's a new universe? Well, that's the whole point, is a universe is defined by however the conscious energies define it. There's a lot
so
of
the
energy
collective
out
consciousness, basically, of how
correct, but what's grappling that collective consciousness now to turn a universe around to its own idea of what it is, and
right, versus the programming,
right? And there's a lot of that right now, and it's even got I would say a deep virus that looks like it's not a virus, where it's like we're awakening and we're doing all these great things, but actually turning the ship over the side of the flat Earth, if you want to call it that. like literally, where it's like making people believe that if everything's gonna be all right and everything's gonna be fine, without looking at like, whoa, like if you don't understand where it's coming from and understand literally how it's coming and the timing of events and the understanding of the historical timings and what the warning shots have been fired from so many amazing people. Behind me, I have one of my libraries, and I go buy books as far as I can. You think books are going to be a thing just in the next? Do you think Barnes and Noble is going to make it? And do you think that our digital stuff is going to be able to be translated and saved? Give me whitewashed in 1 minute. Look at China right now. Like, you can't airdrop in China, and they're protesting everywhere. Apple took away the airdrop. So when you look at, like, that's a King James Bible from 1625. You look in that's not the Bible they teach you at church. People have no idea when even they look at like the Constitution online, or they look at all these things. When you look at the original books from the 1800s of them or anything, there's so much more in there. People are so
programmed.
I think they're overwhelmed, and I think they're lost. But I think that the positive is everybody's ready for.
Well, that's what I mean when I say the programming is like people are realizing that, like, whether it's program, whether you want to call it the matrix, like whatever it is that like you've been following, you realize so much is not true and that doesn't resonate for you anymore. And so hence the awakening, right? And it's like, okay, now what?
Well, and I think, that whole now what, I mean, a lot of it is going to be removing the programs. No matter how hard it seems to do that, right? I mean, even if you see in today's world, there's so much fear still around, whether it's like, can I say that? Or will people, it's like, who cares?
Will I be canceled? Yeah, totally.
See what happens. If anything, they register you as like, let's not mess with that person's energy because they actually know what's up in themselves. Like, the more the collective continues to kneel in this form of, patent, like being, weak in a way of like, I'm just gonna, be for the greater good, give away my energy. There's beings and humans and our history that have taken that for thousands of years and always done that. That's like the number one way they take away.
Yeah, that ain't it.
Like, for a greater good, and get on your knees and give your arms and give it away and and that's what the Catholic Church did. That's how they got rid of the Knights Templar. That's how they got, and that's why we went through dark ages in the 1300s. People don't realize, people think it's just from the bubonic plague. a lot of it, again, if you were to think of these times in this pandemic, a great way to wash history and to wash away and people's energy is to
Yeah.
keep a lot of things in the dark and not, there's not a lot of art anymore. People are, oh, NFTs and all these things. It's like, that's great. But there's like a sense that we're in such a different way of doing things that we're all gonna have to really find, are we doing things from a place that's actually going to build the universe we really want, or are we doing it because you're just following what the other person said that looks
Right.
cool, that you think is the new cool thing, without coming out with your own unique version of it, which is, that's the true awakening, is always your
Mhm.
own understanding of your own code, your own unique self, and realizing that the whole entire true divine program, but the divine mission, the divine fate is already within you, and
Yeah,
all the
that's powerfully
tools
said.
to come
Yeah.
out. But most people are just like, no, I need to still find it outside of myself, or I
Well,
need
and I
to,
need to be
yeah,
told, right? I need to be
yeah,
told what to do. I need to be told how I am going to do this, that, like, and I've dealt with that too. Like, but the more I unprogram, the more I do the inner work, like the harder sometimes it is, because people around me are like, what are you talking about? Like, no, it should be this. No, it should. And I'm like, no, that hasn't worked for me. So I'm going to do things differently. But it's true. It makes you totally have to go so within, because the outside around you is so much noise. It is so much programming. It is so much naysayers saying, I have to follow this. I have to be this. I have to do this, which is why I created my show, because I felt so alone in my awakening. And I was just like, I got to talk about this. I don't know what I'm going
right,
to do, but I got to talk about this. And then it was like, started meeting other people who were like, oh yeah, I went through dark night of soul. Oh yeah, no, I know what that is. And I'm like, oh, there was a name for it. It was like
right,
all of a sudden, like, you start finding people who have also, been through it, or have a gift like you, that, like, know what's going on. You're like, oh, cool. I don't feel so crazy. I'm still feeling a little
right,
crazy, but I don't feel so crazy. Now I've got resources. Now I've got people that I can, when I'm claiming my own sovereignty, I can see other people have done it too. And now they're in a really beautiful place, though it might have taken a moment to get there. And so, yeah, no, I appreciate, all that you just said. And that was so powerful how you said of being within you, because I think you're right. Like, so much of the issues, especially over the last few years and still right now, is everyone's looking outside for permission, for confirmation, for build up, for confidence. I mean, the list goes on, and
it does,
and I even realized in my own journey, with being a celebrity stylist, like, I got so lost in that world, because I was supposed to show up a certain way, and I was supposed to be a certain, this and certain that. And I just got so dark and, like, so fed up, because between, like, the pressure, and then, like, I mean, you've been around it all, between everything, I was just like, my soul felt like it was being, like, sucked. Like, I just felt like sucked
right,
dry. Like, there was no more, like, happiness. There was no more freedom. There was just no more any part of me. It was like, I have all this other stuff in me. And when I had to, like, purge and let go of all of that, I go through my own journey. Like, it got super dark before I was able to get to the other side, because I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is who I've been for so many years. This is my title. Like, this is what, I've been doing for so long. Like, how am I going to just, like, walk away? But I needed to, because it was just like, I needed to be able to come back to me, like you said so beautifully, like, to find what was within me, my own power, my own gifts and everything, and not just feel so like I have to do what everybody else says, because that's what they're telling me and I'm being paid to do.
right. And that's so powerful that you found that and you're doing it. And I think that's the whole point, is it doesn't have to look a certain way. Like, whatever makes you happy and fills you up. It doesn't matter if somebody else has done it and be like, well, somebody else is doing it, I need to do it different. You have to do whatever it is that you feel and just put it out there, however it is.
Totally.
Like, of course I do astrology and, tarot, right? Like, doing tarot back in 2012 and 2013 on YouTube, go look it up. Try and find it. When we were doing it, I was doing it with this man called One Feather. I remember people were like,
One feather, I love it.
are you guys really gonna put tarot on YouTube? Like, that was like a thing that people were questioning. Like, you really think that people are gonna watch that now? It's like millions of, it's insane. Millions, millions, millions of subscribers for people,
Right.
right? Like, it's billions of views. So it's like one of those things where it's like, who cares? Throw
Yeah.
it out. I mean, I feel like we're at a point to where, the collective itself I'll quote, actually, Rick Levine put it good. Him and I did a conference. We do a lot of different stuff once in a while, and we were at Conscious Life Expo in February of 2022 this year, and we did we had like an after talk at the panel, and he said it back. It's like a collective schizophrenia is happening.
Mm.
And especially when Neptune's in Pisces, which it's been since 2011, ironically right before 2012, right? When it's in its home sign, and Pisces, is a sign that is the last zodiac sign, where it's such a wide space in the zodiac too. It's where we look into the infinite. That's where we find our visions, our dreams, but it also is our unconscious. But if you really think also about the programming, it's extremely big, and it's almost it rules drugs. Look at all the drug things over the
Yeah.
last, since
Mhm.
then. And like, what, people are doing fentanyl in the middle of a street
Oh,
now?
I
Like,
know.
what
Insane.
and
I
how many
know.
people are
Mhm.
dying? And you like start to realize like the collective is really like lost, really. And
Mhm.
they're dealing in depression, suicide rates right now, all these things, because if you look at the last time Neptune was in Pisces in 1848, it was the gold rush. It was like, oh my gosh, there's gold there. And then everybody came. It was more like, no, there's no gold, but we're going to steal all your stuff, and claim jumpers. And really, it was a guy named Levi who made made the most money with like, oh, I'm going to make the pants for all these guys who are out there trying to find little gold flakes.
Jeez.
Right. And then on top of that, you have to remember, it's like, that's what the buildup to the Civil War was, right? Like people thinking, oh yeah, I'm allowed to own a slave. No problem. That's no big deal. It's like, what are you talking? What? Like, so there's people that are aware, and then there's people that are completely lost in the sauce. And especially where we're
Mm.
at now, Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces, they haven't met since 1856, and that's when the country, and they even, if most people think the Civil War happened 1860, and that's because Lincoln got put in, and of course the secession from the Union from the Southern Democrats, it was like in creating the Confederacy, right? It was like, no, it was 1856. It was a change of a president. It was bleeding Kansas. It was states that were trying to become territories, trying to become states. And then, people that wanted slavery were literally doing election fraud. Look at the last 2 years, same
Yeah.
astrology. It's like crazy to see
Wow.
that like people are not aware, and like, what's the difference of keeping people locked up like in China right now, and not putting it down,
Hmm.
our own government. Like, it's wild. We are in a place to where the collective is, and I think that's going to be what my harsher part of this would be. I'm a very positive person, but the only way to stay positive is to also be real. And it's like,
Sure.
with Saturn coming into Pisces in March of 2023, Pluto coming into Aquarius, that hasn't happened since 1777, right? When we saw the Revolutionary War. And we haven't seen, Saturn come into Pisces, for 30 years, but now it has Neptune here, and we've never seen that in our lives. We'll never see that ever again, too, for the next 3 years that's coming up. We are about to realize that most of this collective is completely insane, and has been so
Wow.
programmed out that the removal of that programming is going to be the most hardest task that we'll ever have. And that's connected to religion, that's
Hmm.
connected to so many different facets of programming. And that's what the age of Pisces has been for the last couple thousand years. So to see all these things ending, and to see so many planets at the end of the zodiac for the last 4 years, it feels like the end times for people. And that's what's funny, is it's the end of the age of Pisces moving into Aquarius, right? So there is this feeling where people think that the world is going to
Hmm.
end, and I'll be left behind, and all, and it feels that way. But it's also like the signal that we are moving into the new age. And Aquarius is understanding, how to serve, but you understand your uniqueness. It's not, put on a mask and that's how you're serving, because some
Right.
person is telling you to do it, right? It's what
Totally.
you're doing within, that you've come in uniquely to bring here. And it's an air sign, it's intellectual, and it has an understanding of the cosmos. It has an understanding of where we're at in the divine. That's what Uranus
Mm.
rules in Aquarius, and the understanding of how to put all the dots together. And Uranus is the father of Kronos, which is Saturn, Satan, however you want to look at it. and he gets banished by Saturn, his son, right, who eats his own children. I mean, like, people don't realize like all this stuff they're seeing is actually the zodiac playing itself out with the planets in exact positions. It's not like it's, the mythologies, whatever. It's like, well, it's kind of ironic that it is exactly playing out what those all the mythology was, and then you're seeing the same stuff happening now. So when say some of those things that you hear, like babies and the weird stuff, I'm like, that's happening for sure. As an astrologer, if that's exactly what 2020's major conjunction in Capricorn was, where Saturn rules, and Saturn was there, with Pluto, which deals death and all that, we're seeing what people don't want to believe, and that's the hardest part. They don't want to believe, so it's a cognitive dissonance. They don't want to.
Everything's conspiracy.
Yeah, and it's not. The conspiracy is that there are many forces that have taken over good people who are now bad, but they don't even realize that they were taken over. So you can't really blame the person as much as that. We have to really be very cautious in these times and realize that, like I said, there's a third and multiple other now forces that are observing. And the realization as we come to this, what I hope to be a conclusion in the next, 50 years, but I don't know if we'll really get there fully yet, but 50 years, right, is holy cow. We're coming up to like seeing above the clouds for the first time and realizing which we thought was this one God, and which I still believe, of course, right? But there's also that understanding of like, what created that God that we believed was the God? Or is there what all these other entities and all these other things that have malicious intent? Becoming aware of them is almost like, I don't want that. No, it's like people don't want to ever believe because they're programmed to stay in the positive, right? When the positive is to face the darkness. That's what the sun has to do every day, to take out the darkness. That's true. Right? Yeah. So the idea that this positivity, is only through being positive in this kind of belief system, now dogmatic religion of positivity. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be like Tony Robbins all day and running on a treadmill, right? The same way to stay positive and just like totally be in denial of what's going on and what all these things are that are starting to come in and take over people. You have, do you really think that the technologies that we have today came from a human being? Yeah. Like, true. These are the things that are going to be here to wake us up. But if people, I had to get out of my own, I would say, belief, right? Like that I came to a place where I'm like, I don't think people are going to be able, we're not going to be able to make it as far as waking everybody up, because people have already been taken over. I still have to remember to show up like how you do with your show, to have people really talk about their awakenings, and that the awakening never ends. Right. Totally. It's like this unraveling of the onion consistently. Yeah. And the work's never over. Right. Like, right. Like this idea of like, oh yeah, I'm going to work. And then I get to my moment of retirement. And then that's the number one signal you're going to die within, 5 years is retirement. Look at the numbers, right? Like, why? Because what's the purpose of being on this planet anymore if you're already telling the universe, I'm done. Right. I'm done being here. I'm just going to enjoy and just sit around and do Venus things all day, right? And eat grapes and, like, quick, bye-bye. Right. It was nice to have you. And that's where we're at in the history, too, with where we're at for the rest of our lives. Is we're now on the other side. We're on the side of where things go completely opposite of the way that we thought life would go. And it's not turning around. It's not, the bus already took off, the ships already took off. There's no going back, Right. And like, that's okay. So we have to change it, like as a collective. Yeah. But a lot of it is consciously change it. Is realizing that there's nothing to be scared of. Look at the founding fathers, right? That was like, oh God, King George and, you know, the redcoats, and they're too many, and they have all the money, and they have all this stuff. We have pitchforks. We have like a couple people who know how to use guns. We got people who are staying loyal. You know, it's like, gosh, over 90% of the colonial population didn't want to be part of the war, or they just went, yeah, no, King George, right? Like, you have to remember that a very small portion of the people in the 13 colonies actually defeated and created freedom. So
True.
we're in those times right now. And most people just want to sit in the back and be like, yeah, I went to CVS, I got my Band-Aid, and I'm kind of a freedom, but I don't want to get in trouble. I just want to still be able to just have my job, and I want to have my 401k, and I just want to be able to go to work, and I just want to be able to go back to CVS again.
True.
It's like, really? You want to just live that little life still? Which everybody's allowed to do what they want to do, but
Totally.
this is where it's not scary. It's
Right.
scarier to not, you know, give ourselves the chance to number one, actually get off the chains that have been on us by programming, which is a new system, and at the same time realize what else is observing us. That's the deepest question, because that's what making people feel weird and odd and different, is when a new observer comes in. And you can see that in studies through people, right? Like when you take somebody in an FBI like interrogation and they see that glass, they get even more weird. Like, who's behind that glass?
Right.
That's the big question now for us in the universe. We always thought it was like pearly gates and one gate. Not one gate. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like, whoa, like that's already for people like, wait, what do you mean? And it's like, we don't even know what the addresses are to these things. I don't know if it's Mr. Burns and he's going to release the hounds. You know, like there's all these things that we can't be afraid, because it's almost like they're wanting to see what happens. But at the same time, if people really believe in free will and they're all about positivity, well, then that means that it's a free will universe. And that means that these entities can do whatever they want.
Totally.
Literally. Positive or negative.
Right.
It's really about realizing that we're in a trap, and that we are actually the super beings that have been told that we're like lower. There's these higher beings above us and all that stuff. When they're the lower beings feeding on us and have trapped us into believing that we're the ones that there's all these higher entities above us that know more than us, that do all this stuff, when no, they survive off our life force. They survive off our love and our powerful energy. And we have to take back our powers and bring the beauty back to the universe. It's more than the earth. I mean, it's way bigger than that now.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
That galactic consciousness is a lot for people, but you'll find more relief understanding that than what's happening, or you know, worried about which politician's doing what all day. Like, you know, like it's so much bigger. And who's guiding those policies now in life all around, whatever party, like that, you know, people are like, oh, they can't be seen, they might be secret societies. Like, this is bigger than that now. You know, it's takeover, it's program takeover.
Yeah, it's like another level. Yeah. And they're using, like you said, the fear to be able to essentially continue to go up to those higher levels of takeover, because they know what they did with fear before, so they can do it again.
Well, they have quantum computing now.
Yeah, sure.
So they can, all the metadata that has been in your whole life can be put in this quantum computer system now. These quantum computers are insane. So they could take all the data of every single human in the world, and all your data from even your MySpace days to your Facebook to your Instagram, every message, every comment, everything of every text message on every phone that you ever had. And imagine if every human being
crazy
in 2 seconds be like, what time of day do males 25 to 49, you know, get the weakest emotional energy? Boom.
Right.
And then you could add all of your algorithms and they know exactly what that
Crazy.
is. But is it really humans that are doing that? Or is that Google just even said that, oh yeah, we turned off our AI, it became self-aware, just months ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
So is it humans, or is it that, if you ever saw War of the Worlds, right? Like the aliens were already here in Earth under the ground,
I hear
right?
you.
Like it was already
Yeah, right.
pre-planned prior, right? So it's like one of those things of like, especially with where the astrology's at, like to see that we've had so many planets in Aquarius, and then to see that Pluto's coming into Aquarius. Pluto represents our deepest fears. It represents what's hidden. It represents this extreme desire, and also this extreme desire to get rid of something, right? And when it comes into Aquarius, it's other outside entities, other people that are foreign to us energetically, not human. So,
Wow.
the idea, like, also, if you just see where the world's going right now, like people have to realize, like, the program too is like, if where the economy is going right now and all that stuff, like, are you ready with Pluto coming into Aquarius to be like, oh, my friend's knocking on the door and has nowhere to go. Are you going to take them in?
Right.
Or have you been programmed to be like, no? These are going to be questions. That's what I'm saying, is like people are not ready yet. They're not even close to ready to the fragmenting of they're holding on for dear life to think that this thing's going to stay the way it is. It's not. It's not.
Wow.
And that's what happens at the end of Pluto and Capricorn. Like, keep the system going. Even, I don't care if it dies at the end, just keep it running till the end. Chuck the motor when it's done, keep it running. Keep them on life support until they get the will done. Is the will done yet? Just keep them. You know what I mean? Like, that's the energy right now. Keep the stock market going. Keep people in the illusion. Keep it all going. And it's all cracking. And even when the people are seeing the cracks and it's about to blow up in their face, it's just like, oh, well, they say it's not going to happen just yet.
Right. It's
like,
true.
It's like, and so people aren't ready for how it's going to be we're at an X factor moment, right? Or some people call that a black swan moment. Like the pandemic was the weakest fear thing I've ever seen in my life. People are not ready for what's coming next. They're not ready.
So to you, what's coming? So to you, what's coming next?
I mean, I'm about to do a big presentation about this for New Year's Eve, right? Like, people have been waiting. Every 5 years, I do my 5-year predictions, and I do a huge lecture. So Rising Through the Darkness in 2017, I did, and I predicted everything from the exact dates of when you would see. I called it, of course, a plague, but I'm like, the plague's going to come and it's not going to be real, and it's going to be used to control people. And I mean, there's so many predictions of that, whether it was the iPhone factory thing that I called out that just happened, and that they were going to dorm them and make them eat and not leave. And that we're starting to see that. Look at the train strike right now.
Yeah, I saw that.
Now they're forcing the government right now, Congress, Joe Biden is saying, you know what? We're going to force them to work, and they're not going to be able to have sick pay. So in a world where it's like, take care of yourself, wear a mask, RSV, and all these other viruses. But no, you're a train worker? No.
It doesn't apply to you.
Get that stuff moving. Like, how crazy is that?
Yep.
That people are not ready to realize that with that even ready to fall, that's the end of movement of goods around America. Right? So every system right now is at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
And so people have to be prepared for that and to let go of the attachment to it.
Right.
Because that's what's actually the good thing, is when it's not about wishing for it to fall. It's about naturally watching that the universe is making these things fall for a reason, and the opportunities that are there for us to understand what to do. But if people are so lost and not knowing what to do with their lives already now, what are they going to do when actually real free will comes into reality?
Yeah, it's true.
That's why there is no free will, because people can't even do anything with will yet. Not many.
Well, and it's victim mode, right? It's like I'm the victim, so tell me what to do. How do I handle this? How do I handle that? And like you said, not moving into their actual sovereignty, not actually. I mean, I had to recognize that with my own shit. It was like, oh, I'm creating all this. I'm doing all this. I'm not helping myself. I'm not fixing myself, and it was just like, okay, no one's coming to save me. Let me work on myself, but it's like a lot of people don't want to have that conversation with themselves.
No, so go back to 1776, where we're exactly at right now. We're talking on the last day of November, right? Of November 30th of 2022, when we did this. And in 1776, right where Pluto is right now, same position. Washington, they had already lost New York. They already had lost so many ground, and he was on his hands and knees, and all the generals, they were all like, I don't know if we're going to make this revolution happen. And there was a big elephant in the room, right? The whole 13 colonies knew that this declaration was signed. All 13 colonies had agreed on it. And King George was just bringing ships of redcoats, and they were now starting to pillage the towns and force people, right? And that's why we have things like all of our amendments and Bill of Rights to protect from the military. Just can't come into your house and find quarters there, right? Like they were just going, hey, nice house, thank you, King George's. And there was like this elephant in the room that people don't want to, like say like, well, what, like there's these people that are speaking truth, but there's this horrible group of people that is controlling us. And what, I guess I'm just going to keep following them. I'm kind of rooting for the team underground. It's like, eventually it comes to a cracking point to where people are going to be, oh my God, I'm going to have to participate.
Right.
So
they're going to be so cracked open, essentially. Right.
Correct. And I talked about this just recently, but Washington had to he had to give an order to read a pamphlet done by oh God, what was his name? I don't know why, but I don't know why, because I was just thinking of William Penn. I was on another convo about William Penn, but it's not William Penn. It's, what's his name? Oh man. Anyway, it was a pamphlet.
Okay, it's late.
Yeah, it is late, but it was about these are the times that try men's souls. It was the American Crisis. It was done by what's his name? Oh my gosh.
You're asking me, and
it'll come to me in a second. It'll come for me in a second. I've been going through a lot the last couple of days.
It's all good.
But that's what's crazy is like he had to actually order men to like realize like this is an American crisis moment. These are the times that try all men and women. But back then that was just the way they said it, because nobody wanted to do anything.
Right.
Everybody wanted to kind of like, hopefully just the great thing will just change and we'll not have to participate. That's not coming. And so the hard part of that was watching, and where we're at now is the big elephant in the room is the whole entire world has just gotten completely, gosh, I don't even want to say that word, but I'll be nice. I'll just say that has been, let's just say, mutilated or fondled with in the most inappropriate way. And there's a huge elephant in the room of what the heck is really going on with what has been injected into over half the population of the world. But nobody wants to just even question it from that. It's not
well, nobody wants to talk about it because they don't. It's cognitive dissonance. They don't.
Yeah, I mean, if I had that in me, which I don't, I would.
I hear you.
Balls.
Same.
I'd be having fucking panic attacks every day because there is no ingredients list. Why? It's just a white piece of paper.
White piece of paper.
And all you're
blank piece of paper.
And you've you were lied to the whole time. Like, yeah, you're gonna be fine, and you'll never die, and you'll all the fact that people won't even acknowledge that the lies, and won't even acknowledge that how is this going to affect our military? How is this going to affect all of you have to remember that in America, 70% of people got even one. It doesn't matter if it was 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. It doesn't matter. What is in that? Because there's something about that connected to so much that's happening in this world. And it's really weird whether destiny does its thing. When Pluto comes to the end of Capricorn and Aquarius, we see a dip in the birth rate. Same thing happened during the Revolutionary War. We see not a lot of new births happening. We see a huge decline in civilization. we see a huge decline, and it's all happening in front of people's faces, and they're just kind of like, no, we
I
want to
don't
go
want to
back
look.
to the old
Yeah.
way. And there is
Yeah.
that old way is, if you really tap in, it's already been buried in the grave, and all the people that are in the aware already know and have already been to that grave site and already have every year been putting flowers on that grave, like it's gone. But there's the illusion up that it's still running, and it's running because the collective's still running it, in the illusion
And
that
that's the attachment you're speaking to.
the attachment, and then also the illusion that's running on our black screens on our phones and on our televisions, that literally, I don't know if I could give a percentage, right? I'm not going to say like I know, but I would say that it's, if I were to like estimate that, we're probably at almost 100% of it. Do we even know is really real?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like how much of it is just created and staged and actors and CGI'd out?
World stage. Yeah.
World stage, all of it, the whole thing. People have really no idea that it would be that easy to do. And so that's where we're at, is like, the real
It's all on the world stage.
Yeah, the real awakening, we all are going to be at front row seats who are already awake, watch that happen and see what's going to happen. We are coming into in alchemy, there's the understanding that there's chaos and order. People think that we've already been at chaos. I'm like, we just have swung, there's still order. We haven't fully even swung the pendulum to chaos yet. Because there's still order.
Right. True.
But but when you have an order that's from an illusion, that creates, I would say, when the pendulum swings to chaos, will it ever swing back to order? Is it going to do a triple backflip and not know how to swing back? Right. Which it eventually will. But I think that's where
I get you.
We're at a time where that's nothing to be scared of either. Right. It's in those moments of chaos that free things up. And so, but also, there's a huge moment here of the longer the elephant sits in the room, the harder it gets.
Sure. But do you feel, in your opinion, I'm kind of like watching all this play out, because I just feel like, even from observing over the last few years, as I've kind of awakened more, I feel like I've seen more wake up over the last couple of years. I feel like I've seen more people, as much as there is definitely a lot of cognitive dissonance and a lot of the programming. I feel like I've also seen more waves of more people, especially in the last year, who have been starting to essentially unprogram and start to awaken in their own way and realize there's more than what they're being told.
Oh yeah. I would say that I would say that most of our complete collective of all of the humans on this planet are awake to it all, to be honest with you. It's just whether or not the level of using that awakening is at the same. We all have to come. What's hard with Uranus and Taurus, like we've been in since 2018, and it finishes here in 2025 into 2020, it's like we're at a point to where it's like we all have our own values. We all have our own way of what makes us feel good in life and not feel good. But for a collective to come together, which we're already all together, we all see what's going on. Even the people that you see on Twitter or anywhere that act like they don't, they do, right? We all do. We're all on the same team. We all feel it. We all feel that it's all weird. It's easy subconsciously to take its side, though, in it.
Sure.
Right? No side is right. No side is wrong, as much as it is when you come to the real awakening that we're all awake, but it's about the levels of how are we finding. It's like really hard to bring the levels of the collective on the same level of how we're going to change things and understand things. And that's part of this process at this moment is the bars are all up here and everybody's going through this evolutionary process where, if we take that model too, it's like our species is going through an evolutionary moment here, and whether or not it's going to accept this technological, source of the unknown, if we're going to live a synthetic life or not, and I think that's where, the scary part of the consciousness is are they trying to take consciousness away from us,
Oh, for sure. I think so.
like that's the weird technology stuff that all these big Aquarius weird situations we've been seeing, and everything since 2020 is Saturn and Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, which is so rare. It happened in 1518 and it happened in 1284. Prior to that, you have to realize like those are moments where power structures and secret powers are behind everything, and usually it was more human. This is a different one, that it's
Right.
not just human, but it's some other force out there that's observing that. And the other X factor is like every time we find a new planet, things change. So the last true planet we found was Pluto, and then of course, because it deals with all the things that are conspiracies, death, sex, all the deeper stuff, let's take that one off the list. And so there is another planet, and then when we find that's the X factor that we're all waiting for. The actual conscious understanding of what an X factor is. That's how we evolve as species, as we keep moving the ladder of our conscious awareness, and if you understand it from a planetary aspect, that's how it works. I mean, if you think about it, like the idea that we could finally understand the rotations of the planets with Ptolemy and understand the cycles and retrogrades, like, oh wow. But like, it was Galileo who truly found Neptune, but that was in 1613, but no, it was not found until the 1840s.
Right.
Like, there's so much more. There's people who are seeing it and might not even realize that it might take another 100 years for people to then verify that they were true. So you can't think that people are crazy at this moment who are trying to go the extra distance.
Right.
People who are trying to go the extra distance to wake people up and to look at things and not be afraid. Those are the people I trust in life. I'm like, I don't care what side of the fence you are. I don't care what your beliefs are.
Right.
You're on the team of wanting to wake up people. That's where we have to start realizing that that's the bars we all have to start aiming for, and looking at each other and all helping each other lift our bars up of each other, of we can all raise our bars, all of us. There's nobody who's better than anybody at this moment.
Right.
There's nobody,
sure.
and there never will be. It's
Right.
only as best as we all can be together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but we all have to start, we
got to start doing that.
there's no real organization. If you want to be honest, there's no organization for it,
Right. So what do you think, like closing this out, because we've been all over, which I love, and it's awesome. I mean, so what do you think, we're coming to the end of the year where, it's going to be December, and the next day, we're coming into 2023, which is crazy. I mean, what are your thoughts on what's coming in 2023 that you can give? Because I know you do like your whole New Year thing, but like what little bit, would you spill, or would you say, that you feel like you see, is coming?
We're about to watch society take a complete sideways turn in a direction we never thought is possible. We're going to see systems of government systems to financial systems, but even more importantly, just social systems and our common understanding of the common people and how we think our society works, make the crazy turn that we all have been feeling and anticipating for, and our heads are going to hit the side window as it's happening, and we'll be okay for those that have been preparing for it. But it's going to jolt the idea of where is life going to go from here now forward. There is going to be the beginnings of natural disaster moments that are going to make Fukushima seem like that was nothing.
Wow.
And this is going to be part of the Great Awakening of us having to find X factor moments until the X factor gets big enough to where everybody finally comes together and dissolves all their bullshit, which I don't think is going to happen until 2024. But there is definitely 2023 realizing X factors are showing up, discoveries in space that are going to bewilder us, and a bunch of disclosures about the stuff that we already knew was happening, and it won't be full, and that's going to really piss people off because they're going to have to disclose so much, but they're going to leave some parts redacted just enough to piss people off, and that's like done by design.
Sure. To keep the control a bit.
Yeah. I think that people have to start thinking about not fear, but bring it on, bring it all on. Like, and letting your own inner dogmatic belief systems, you're going to have to face those in the hardest ways of, like, you think fentanyl is a crisis, the religious and scientific religions themselves are harder than that to get off of.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
To be able to see clearly what's going on.
Wow.
That's
a lot coming.
Yeah. And I would say religious wars are going to be behind the deeper parts of what you've been seeing. People have been thinking it's been more about countries and all that. It's about ideology, religion, and dogmatic beliefs, and there's a lot more going on than people could even fathom when it comes to why this has all been happening. World War III has already been happening.
Right. I've heard a lot of people say that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, but again, a lot of this has been manufactured on TV of how it like is supposed to look or whatever. But like, there's been a World War III, and it's that third entity that is now observing.
Interesting. Wow. So much to unpack, so much that I have to process after this interview. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't your typical Mercury retrograde, and this is a great
No.
year
I didn't want typical Mercury retrograde. That's all. It's all good. No, I appreciated, I mean, this is why I wanted to have you on, because I've watched you, I've followed you, I've, seen your style and, how you speak, you're super real and raw, you've been, predicting all these different things for so long, it's so fascinating to watch that with your gifts. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted you to be you, and I think that's a huge part of my show, is like, this awakening is about your authenticity. It's about being you. It's about, like you said, not looking outside. It's about looking within, going back to, like, that divine, God, source, whatever it is, like that divinity, to be able to step into your sovereignty, and so I think you express that with, like, sharing all the different things that you shared. And I think more and more people need to be, comfortable, not only comfortable, but like excited about that, and stepping into that, instead of, I have to stay in this box or something will happen.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's really, that's the only true authentic way to be, is fully authentic. Like, you can't care what anybody is gonna think, and as long as you're not being malicious, right? You're
Right.
trying to, the needle through this whole message was, there's nothing to be afraid of. That's the whole point, right? It's like, all these systems are the things that keep you in a locked state, as you just said, like trapped.
Yeah.
So it's just about not being afraid, and being authentic, and having the best time. This is the best time. I mean, it reminds me when I was in my teens, like, let's go have some fun. Let's throw the freaking bike over the fence and let's see what's on that other side, Like, it's crazy how a lot of people are afraid of that in life. And
Yeah.
even as a teen, I remember, like, so even dudes, like, oh, they would quiver. My mom, she'll be mad. Like, all right.
Right. Yeah. So the message is, don't be afraid, awaken to all that's within you. Yeah. And be open.
And the feminine needs a lot of support, but it's been wild, because now the inverse is going to happen, where there's not going to be as many men left on the planet over these coming decades, and it's going to be more women than men. And men are going to be harder to find, just as friends or lovers for other women and stuff like that. Like, and even looking at the birth rate at this moment, and the stillbirths, and these are all things that are all been said astrologically, and that are in the astrology, that the divine masculine energy is going to be very hard to find, and it's also going to be persecuted, and it's all going to be the opposite right? Like the men will be the witches, and you're
Oh.
already seeing that with Alex Jones or all these other
Mhm.
things, right? Like, right, like they're attacking the men like the witch trials of 1692. So,
Interesting.
and women
Wow.
need to pay attention to that because you all got your y'all got your patriarchy taken down, and you all got the things you deserved, and there was a bunch of horrible things done. And of course, this wasn't done by any of us, right? Like, right?
Right.
Like we're using
Right.
history here. So it's like, what are the women going to do? Are they going to sit by and watch as the men get treated as the women once did?
Mm, I get you.
Does that
Yeah.
make
And so, I mean, yeah. And so then, like, that's essentially how you're talking also about that collective consciousness coming together. It's also like that divine, like sacred feminine coming together with the masculine and being able to be like in harmony and not so polarized. Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole. It would be an inverse way, right? Like men are easier, I think, back in the old days to go along because men are more about their prestige and where they're at in their life and to keep it going and to have power and control, right?
Right.
So if you think about like the witch trials, right? If the men who were sitting in the background watching all these things happen were like, well, if the judge sees me or if the reverend sees me, like, then I won't be able to go to next week's thing, right? Some crazy, stupid man, dumbass thing. But in this one, women, it's like, holy shit, like that's so fucked up. Women are way stronger than men
Hmm.
when it comes to the spiritual energy, when it comes to the
Oh,
soul,
yeah, for
when it
sure.
comes to the ability to actually like, especially see injustices. Venus, you know, has that great ability to be like, this is unfair. Men are here to fight where the injustices are at. And so it's the feminine that has to lead other feminines, but also the masculines into understanding where the real fights are. Like the problem is that the masculine doesn't know where to really fight. It's the feminine that knows where the
Mm,
true injustices are and the imbalances. So I think it's going to be important, and I think that's going to be something that you're going to start to seeing is why are all these men who are speaking truth and that are coming out with this awakening being labeled as witchcraft in a weird way, and
hmm.
also the spiritual community, which I've warned and it's already started. We all need to have each other's backs, and it can't just be just light fun tarot readings anymore. Like it has to be like we all have to look after each other because whether it's the censorship of it that's been happening or the Catholic
Sure.
Church already prepping up with the Pope saying people need to stop looking at this stuff, to the governments now using the Democratic Party as the way is like, oh my God, everybody that's there is demonic Satan, or look at what's happening with that clothing brand, right? I don't even want to say
Hmm.
its name because it's got
Yep. I hear
right
you.
that that's all connecting to the occult, which
Yep. Oh, I
it's
know
spiritual
that.
to get
Oh,
through
yeah.
that. So guess
Hmm.
what? Guess who they're coming after?
Right. The children.
Well, they're all coming after all of us and the children that are into this at all spirituality and taking it as
Right.
that it's
For
dark
sure.
when we're not using it as dark. It was like used intentionally by certain people to make it dark to get rid of
Right.
the awakening process. That's the deeper thing that people have to look at.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's powerful.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's where I lean more right politically, but I'm just saying that now this is where the right wing starts to go crazy and start to go into their crazy Christian thing and the demonic, and,
Hmm.
and now
I hear you.
they've set up the program to be like the Democrats are
Right.
demonic, and then and they use the occult. Look at how it's gotten straight to the occult.
Right.
Now the right wing comes in and all their little like George Bushes they're pushing up to
Right.
the new terrorists are occult and
I hear you.
occultism.
Yeah. Wow. So again,
So be
paying
careful
attention
out
to
there.
all the programs.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So again, going back to what we were saying, like that awakening is like that sovereignty. As much as you can deprogram, as much as you continue to find divinity within you and keep looking within you and stop looking outside and looking for the answers in programs, the more you're going to be better off. Is kind of what you're saying, right? As far as going into what we're going into over the next year or two.
Yeah, because if you think of the program, like, right, like whether it's a woman in LA going to shop at that brand that thou we shall not say because
Yes.
actually praising a dark being as a
Oh, I
kid,
know. Oh, I know.
to a dude, with a cowboy hat on in Texas with an American flag shirt on. There's no difference between both people. They're not doing anything of an ill intention. The guy in Texas isn't wanting to take down the government, and the woman going to that store just wanted some clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Both don't want the end of the country. Both don't want the end of the world. Both don't want the end and suffering of
Right.
anybody.
It's the programming behind it. Yeah.
Correct. So that's the needle we're going to have to thread here, is seeing that.
Mm. From all sides. I get you.
Mm-hmm. So not easy, but that's where I think like the best you could be is be a Renaissance man or woman, right? That you're all those things. Like I can go to Texas and fucking, I love trucks. I have 2 trucks and I have too many cars, but like, I fucking love doing that. But then I also love being in LA and dressing in my nice shit. So it's like that you
Right.
don't know where to be fit in because you're not fitting in anything. You are all of it.
Right. You're all of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's a good way to, yeah. Yeah. You're all of it because we're multidimensional beings, right? So
Right.
we're all of it. Yeah.
The idea that you can't be something because it's something that you don't like ask yourself why. Is that a program? Because your
Yeah.
mom didn't like it, or because, whatever it might be, or your friends will think you're weird, or,
Yeah.
like
It's true.
even my girlfriend, she wanted me to go to some girl store and fucking be there all day. And I'd fucking be like, let's do it. Right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just like living life. This whole world was meant to be lived in fully, but they have made it to where they concentrate like a virus does on certain parts of the computer system and keep files and keep different parts of the system locked up and overly
Mm-hmm.
concentrated to where the system runs slower, and then they can take over the system easier. So they make people go, and you see the migrations of people right now, like
Mm-hmm.
to different states, and thinking I'm safe here, or I'm staying because I'm safe here. It doesn't matter what side you're on. Everybody is migrated to a place thinking I'm safer here. There is no such thing. You already are safe wherever you're at. It's just whether or not you're not seeing how to be safe, which is seeing that we're all being set up. We're all being set up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so again, stepping out of the programming. And so if you are listening or watching and you're awakening or you've been awake, then I think, like you said, it's not being fearful and it's being able to continue to tap into your own sovereignty and continue to step away from all this and help others do the same so that we can build this essentially newer consciousness and newer earth that we know can be there. But we're just in, like you said, this crazy inversion right now.
Yeah. Which is fucking badass,
Yeah, as I told people, I'm like, if you really think about it, like we get to like change things. Like we get to, I mean, that's why I say,
Right.
having 3 kids, like, being a conscious parent is so important because it's like they are who is coming up. They are,
Right.
going to be the world. Like, so helping them to not have the programs, helping them to be able to step into like their sovereignty, to own their gifts, to letting them be who they are and not, making it wrong or not telling them, they can't do this or they can't do that. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, I talk about that with moms all the time. I'm like, that consciousness is so important with your kids. It's probably more important than anything else than you realize because they are the ones that are coming into this world. Like we're halfway through or we're quarter way through or whatever it is. Like they're, the newer, which is why we know obviously they're targeting them as well. So
yeah, because if you think about it, if you go to have a child now, it's like, well, if they don't take this at the hospital, they don't do, it's like, okay, that's a system that, do you think in 3 years it'll even be working?
Right. No.
Right. So you got to think like, everybody has to like let go of the program. Like it's very hard for a lot of people.
It is. Oh, it was hard for me. It was a lot of dark nights of the soul afterwards.
It's hard for everybody because it's super imprinted at the deepest level. And we're never going to fully get rid of all of it because a lot of it too is also like what makes us better, like about how we got through those dark nights of the soul. And so we want to keep some of those understandings of the program and you know, like they're kind of like reference points too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, like that whole idea of the program, they're like, what, but if I don't do that, then what happens in 10 years? It's like, wow. Like,
Just live.
look how it all shut down, you know, in 2020. So,
Yep.
you know,
It's
like
true.
that was the lesson. Like you aimed your whole life down a program that failed you, and it failed, you
Yeah.
know. So
Now what?
and that was the little moment where the computer, like the fan was about to overheat and they were able to kind of fix it, but the thing's teeter-tottering. It's like an old boat that's on its last, you know, pieces of wood that are left on the planks that are ready to rot, and the whole
Yeah.
thing's about to just shatter, like, you know, like, and that
Yeah.
happens. Happened in Rome. So
Yeah. True.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Wow.
great. Yeah, it was great to be on, and I appreciate you, and you do great work. It's been great, you
Thank
know,
you.
that we've been friends and following each other for so long now, and that you're pushing all
Yeah.
this work, and it's just
Thank
great
you.
that, you know, there's other people out there that we can all connect with. And
Yeah, like you said, we have to help each other. And as other people kind of wake up to this and, they go through their own things, being able to be resources and support for each other. And, and the more we continue to have these types of conversations, the more it's not going to be weird, quote unquote, the more
right,
it's not going to be out there. It's going to be, oh, that's what's happening. Okay, we're all going through that. Because like I was saying to someone the other day, I'm like, you're going through it too, whether you're conscious of it or not. It's just the difference is that I'm conscious of it and you're not. I mean, it doesn't make me better by any means. It just means I'm conscious of it. I'm just literally aware that it's happening, whereas you're looking at little things thinking that's what it is, and it's not. So it's just
right,
a different way of being, right? So the more we have these conversations, the more, like you said, help people not look at the fear and be able to move forward and look at the falls and the system collapses and all these different things as a good thing, and know that like we're going to rebuild because that's what you do in those times, versus just wanting to stay in the program of, but I'm comfortable here, I'll just stay here. That's what the awakening is about.
right. And I would say that it's no longer an elephant in the room. It's a crazy AI robot dressed as a carny, ushering you to go into Pleasure Island like Pinocchio ended up in.
Yeah, well said. I get that reference.
So,
Yeah, cool.
yep.
Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your gift, and giving us kind of a whole rundown of kind of what's going on and what's coming. I will have everything in the show notes, but tell us where we can find you, follow you, all that good stuff.
Highvibe.tv, our apps. You can just look up High Vibe TV, spiritual network on every platform from Roku to Apple TV or iPhone, Android, or highvibe.tv. And you can find all my stuff there. My YouTube is The Leo King, and all the other platforms is The Leo King. But
Awesome.
the
Yeah.
network and where I'm at here at the studios, this is just my office, but we have full TV studios here, and we do
So
original
cool.
content every day, live stream, live chat in the app, everything, a community, the whole nine. So
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. So if you're going through an awakening, or you're just waking up, or you don't know where you are, but you're listening and you found yourself here, go check out the Leo King.
thanks so much.
Thanks so much, guys. All right, guys. Love, light, blessings. I will see y'all soon.
Bye.
Bye.